Ever heard of a hormone called aldosterone?
Most people haven't.
No.
It's one of those unsung heroes, you know?
Get ready to have your mind blown, because today we're diving deep into the world of this tiny but mighty chemical messenger. We'll be using excerpts from the medical physiology textbook, Clinical Physiology of Acid-Base and Electrolyte Disorders, to guide our exploration.
Great book.
And trust me, it's way more exciting than it sounds.
Oh, it really is. Aldosterone is fascinating.
Okay, so let's start with the basics.
Sure.
What exactly is aldosterone, and why should we care about it?
Well, aldosterone is a hormone produced in your adrenal glands.
Okay.
Those little triangular organs that sit right on top of your kidneys.
Right.
And even though most people haven't heard of it,
Right.
aldosterone plays a huge GE role in regulating salt and water balance in your body.
And why is that important?
Think about it this way.
Okay.
Your body needs just the right amount of sodium and potassium to function properly. Sodium, for example, is essential for nerve impulses, muscle contractions, and regulating fluid balance. Potassium is crucial for heart function and maintaining the electrical balance within our cells.
Right.
And guess what?
Right.
Aldosterone is the maestro of this delicate balancing act.
So it's like this tiny hormone is conducting a whole orchestra of bodily functions.
Exactly. Primarily, aldosterone acts on your kidneys,
Okay.
those incredible filtering systems that clean your blood and remove waste products.
Right.
Aldosterone fine-tunes that filtering process, making sure the right amount of sodium and potassium stays in your bloodstream while excess amounts are excreted.
So walk me through this.
Sure.
How does aldosterone actually do that? I mean, what's happening at the cellular level?
It's actually quite elegant.
Hey.
Imagine a lock and key system.
Okay.
Aldosterone travels through your bloodstream to specific cells in the kidneys and binds to receptors, just like a key fitting into a lock.
And that binding triggers a chain reaction inside the cell.
Precisely. It sets off a cascade of events, like a domino effect,
Okay.
that ultimately tells the kidneys to reabsorb more sodium and chloride.
So basically...
This basically means your body holds on to more of these electrolytes instead of flushing them out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what about potassium? Does aldosterone affect that too?
It sure does. While it's busy telling your kidneys to hold on to sodium, aldosterone simultaneously prompts them to secrete potassium,
Okay.
meaning your body gets rid of more of it.
So all about...
It's all about maintaining that perfect balance.
Gotcha. So aldosterone is a real multitasker. But here's a question that popped into my mind.
Yeah.
We've all heard of cortisol, the so-called stress hormone.
Right.
Doesn't cortisol also have something to do with sodium and fluid balance?
It does, yeah.
Could they be working against each other?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And you're right, cortisol can bind to the same receptors as aldosterone.
Huh.
You might wonder,
I am wondering. Yeah,
doesn't that mess things up?
it would seem so.
Thankfully, our bodies are way smarter than we give them credit for.
Okay, good.
They have this clever workaround to prevent cortisol from acting like a mineralocorticoid, which is what aldosterone is.
Right.
It's all thanks to a special enzyme called 11-beta-hydroxystorate dehydrogenase.
Okay, hold on.
That's a long one.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for us non-scientists?
Sure. Think of this enzyme as the body's designated driver for cortisol.
Okay.
It converts cortisol into a form that can't bind to those aldosterone receptors. It's like taking the keys away from a potentially reckless driver to prevent any accidents.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So this enzyme basically prevents cortisol from mimicking aldosterone and messing with our electrolyte balance.
Exactly. It ensures that cortisol doesn't overstep its boundaries and interfere with aldosterone's important work.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But you mentioned licorice earlier.
Right.
What does that have to do with any of this?
Ah, yes. This is where things get really interesting. Remember that enzyme I just mentioned? The one that keeps cortisol in check?
Yeah.
Well, licorice contains a compound called glycyrrhetinic acid, and guess what?
What?
It blocks that enzyme.
So you're telling me that eating licorice could potentially allow cortisol to start acting like aldosterone?
Yeah, if you eat enough,
That sounds a little scary.
it can be.
Yeah.
Suddenly, because the enzyme is blocked, cortisol is free to bind to those aldosterone receptors.
Oh, wow.
And that can lead to problems like high blood pressure,
Oh.
fluid retention, and even potassium depletion.
Wow, so maybe think twice before binging on those licorice all sorts. It turns out they're not as innocent as they seem.
Right.
Who knew candy could be so sneaky?
It's a great example of how Even seemingly harmless things can have surprising effects on our bodies, especially when powerful hormones are involved.
Okay, so we've established that aldosterone is this crucial hormone that regulates salt and water balance. And we've learned that even licorice can mess with this delicate system. But what else controls aldosterone production?
Well,
What tells our bodies to make more or less of it?
one of the most important factors is blood pressure.
Okay.
Remember how we said aldosterone is crucial for volume regulation in your body?
Right.
That ties directly into one of its main control mechanisms,
Okay.
the renin-angiotensin system,
Okay.
which you might know as a key player in regulating blood pressure.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connections here.
Mm-hmm.
But remind me how that system works again.
Absolutely. Think of it as a chain reaction.
Okay.
When your blood pressure drops, let's say you're dehydrated, your kidneys release an enzyme called renin.
And then what happens? Does renin directly stimulate aldosterone production?
Not quite.
Okay.
Renin sets off a cascade of events, ultimately leading to the production of angiotensin II, which is a powerful vasoconstrictor.
Vasoconstrictor, meaning it narrows your blood vessels, right?
Exactly. And narrowing those blood vessels helps raise your blood pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all coming back to me now.
Mm-hmm.
But how does this tie back to aldosterone?
Here's the key. Angiotensin II also directly stimulates the production of aldosterone.
I see. So it's like a double whammy for raising blood pressure.
Right.
Angiotensin II constricts blood vessels, and aldosterone tells your body to hold on to more salt and water, further increasing blood volume.
You nailed it. It's a beautifully orchestrated system that helps to restore your fluid volume if you're dehydrated and get your blood pressure back to normal.
That makes a lot of sense. But what if my blood pressure is already high? Does my body just keep churning out aldosterone?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it highlights the brilliance of this system.
Yeah.
When your blood pressure is high, the renin-angiotensin system is downregulated.
Okay.
Think of it like your body putting the brakes on that chain reaction to prevent things from getting out of control.
So high blood pressure actually reduces aldosterone secretion.
Exactly. And that makes sense, right?
It does, yeah.
When your blood pressure is high, you want to encourage your body to get rid of excess sodium and water to bring it back down.
Right.
And reducing aldosterone does just that.
Wow. It really is a constant balancing act. Our bodies are constantly monitoring and adjusting to keep everything in equilibrium.
They are. And it's not just blood pressure that influences aldosterone production.
Right.
Remember how we talked about the importance of potassium balance?
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier.
Well, it turns out that potassium levels themselves can directly influence aldosterone secretion.
Really? So if my potassium levels are high, my body will release more aldosterone to get rid of it.
You got it.
Wow.
And vice versa, if your potassium is low, aldosterone secretion is suppressed.
So it's like our bodies are always fine-tuning the system, making sure both sodium and potassium levels stay within a healthy range.
Precisely. It's a truly remarkable system.
Yeah.
And there's even more. A hormone released by the pituitary gland called ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, can also stimulate aldosterone release.
And what about sodium itself? Does the amount of sodium in our blood directly affect aldosterone production?
That's a great question. It does, but to a lesser extent than you might think.
Okay.
While low sodium can stimulate aldosterone release and high sodium can suppress it, these effects are usually overshadowed by the other factors we've discussed.
Interesting. So if I eat a really salty meal, my body will adjust by lowering aldosterone levels to get rid of that excess sodium, but this effect might be less pronounced than the effects of blood pressure or potassium levels.
Exactly. Your body prioritizes maintaining fluid balance and blood pressure.
Right.
So even though sodium does have a direct effect on aldosterone, it often takes a back seat to those other players.
Wow. I had no idea. There was so much complexity involved in regulating a single hormone.
I know, right?
It's like a whole symphony of signals and feedback loops.
It really is.
Yeah, it really is.
And we're only scratching the surface. But before we move on, I think it's crucial to understand how all these factors we've talked about, sodium, potassium, volume regulation, blood pressure, all come together to create this intricate web of balance.
Okay, let's dive into that.
Okay.
How does aldosterone manage to juggle all these balls at once?
Yeah.
It seems like a lot to handle for one little hormone.
It is, and it's a testament to how adaptable and resilient our bodies truly are. For example, even when things get complicated,
Okay.
let's say you're dealing with volume depletion,
Right.
like in heart failure,
Okay.
your body still finds ways to maintain balance.
Wait, volume depletion.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that trigger the renin-angiotensin system and lead to increased aldosterone? Wouldn't that just make things worse?
You would think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But remember, aldosterone doesn't act in isolation
Okay.
in cases of volume depletion.
Okay.
Even though aldosterone levels are high,
Okay.
the body manages to prevent excessive potassium loss through other mechanisms. It's like it has a backup plan in place.
That's incredible.
Mm.
So even when our bodies are stressed, they find a way to compensate and keep things from spiraling out of control.
Precisely. And that brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of aldosterone. Something called aldosterone escape.
Escape.
Yeah.
Okay, now you've really got my attention.
Okay.
What is that all about?
You see, if aldosterone levels stay high for too long,
Okay.
for example, in a condition called primary aldosteronism, our bodies eventually figure out a way to escape its sodium-retaining effects.
So you're telling me that even if my aldosterone goes haywire, my body has a built-in safety net to prevent things from spiraling out of control.
It does.
That's reassuring. But how does it actually work?
Well, there are a few key players involved.
Oh.
One is atrial natriuretic peptide, or ANP for
ANP? That rings a bell?
Yeah.
Doesn't have something to do with fluid balance?
Right. ANP is a hormone released by your heart
Okay.
in response to increased blood volume or pressure. It acts as a counterbalance to aldosterone, promoting sodium and water excretion.
So in aldosterone escape, ANP production increases to offset the sodium-retaining effects of aldosterone.
Exactly.
Like ANP is stepping in to say, hey, aldosterone, I know you're trying to do your job, but things are getting a little out of hand here.
Exactly. And ANP doesn't stop there. It also increases your glomerular filtration rate,
Okay.
which is basically the speed at which your kidneys filter blood.
So ANP is working against aldosterone on multiple fronts.
It is, but there's more.
All right.
Increased blood pressure itself plays a role too. As your blood pressure rises, your kidneys naturally start excreting more sodium and water to bring it back down.
Oh, that pressure natriuresis we talked about earlier.
Right.
It's like a built-in safety valve to prevent things from going too far.
You got it. And there's even evidence that suggests a change in sodium transporter abundance in the kidneys might contribute to this escape as well.
Okay, so maybe a bit of a mystery still surrounding that last part. But the main takeaway here is that even when aldosterone levels are persistently elevated, our bodies find ways to compensate, preventing excessive fluid retention and runaway high blood pressure. That's truly remarkable.
It is, and it just goes to show how intricate and intelligent our bodies are.
It really does, yeah. This aldosterone escape mechanism is blowing my mind. It makes you realize that even when things go wrong, our bodies have these incredible backup systems in place.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
But let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture of sodium and potassium balance.
Okay.
Why is it so crucial that those levels are kept within such a narrow range?
That's a fantastic question, and it really gets to the heart of why aldosterone is so important.
Oh, yeah.
You see, sodium and potassium are essential for just about every process in your body.
Right.
They're like the yin and yang of cellular function.
Yin and yang. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Tell me more.
Yeah, tell me more.
Well, sodium is the predominant electrolyte outside our cells,
Okay.
while potassium reigns supreme inside. This difference in concentration is what creates the electrical potential.
Right.
That powers everything from your thoughts to your heartbeat.
Hold on.
Yeah.
You're telling me that the difference in sodium and potassium concentrations inside and outside our cells creates electricity.
Yeah.
Like actual electrical currents running through our bodies.
Exactly. Think of it like a battery.
Okay.
Having more sodium outside and more potassium inside the cell creates this electrical charge.
Okay.
Like a tiny battery powering all these essential functions.
Oh.
And without the right balance of sodium and potassium, that battery starts to fizzle out.
Wow, that's incredible. So it's not just about keeping our blood pressure in check.
Right.
It's about the very foundation of how our cells operate.
Right.
And aldosterone is a key player in maintaining that balance.
Precisely.
Oh.
By regulating sodium and potassium reabsorption in the kidneys,
Right.
aldosterone ensures that the right amounts of these electrolytes are present in the right places. It's like a conductor making sure all the instruments in the orchestra are playing in harmony.
And I'm guessing that even small imbalances in these electrolytes can throw off the whole symphony.
They can. You might experience muscle cramps, fatigue, and irregular heartbeat.
Oh, gosh.
All sorts of things can go wrong if those sodium and potassium levels get out of whack.
Right.
And in more severe cases, these imbalances can be life-threatening.
That makes the role of aldosterone seem even more critical.
It is.
It's not just a minor player. It's essential for maintaining the very electrical currents that power our lives.
It is.
But with all the other challenges our bodies face,
Yeah.
dehydration, stress, changes in diet, how does aldosterone manage to keep everything balanced?
Well, that's where those intricate feedback loops you talked about earlier come into play.
Right.
Remember the renin-angiotensin system, potassium levels, and ACTH?
Right.
They all work together to fine-tune aldosterone secretion based on the body's needs.
Okay, so let's walk through an example. What happens when our bodies are losing fluids? Like when we're sweating a lot on a hot day or experiencing diarrhea?
Great example. In those situations,
Yeah.
you're losing both fluids and electrolytes, including sodium.
Right.
And that fluid loss triggers the renin-angiotensin system, which, as we discussed, stimulates aldosterone production.
So aldosterone steps in to tell the kidneys, hey, hold on to that sodium. We need to conserve fluids.
Exactly. Aldosterone helps to restore your fluid balance by increasing sodium reabsorption in the kidneys.
Okay.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Remember, aldosterone also increases potassium excretion.
Right.
So how does it manage to regulate both electrolytes at the same time, especially when they seem to have opposite effects?
That's a great point. It seems like it'd be tough to walk that tightrope,
Yeah.
keeping both sodium and potassium levels in check.
You're right. It is a complex balancing act.
Yeah.
But our kidneys are up to the task. Different parts of the nephron,
Oh,
the functional unit of the kidney, specialize in handling different electrolytes.
no, okay.
While aldosterone is busy stimulating potassium secretion in the distal parts of the nephron.
Right.
Other factors are influencing sodium reabsorption in earlier parts.
So it's like a coordinated effort with different parts of the kidney working together to achieve overall balance.
Yeah.
It's teamwork at the microscopic level.
Exactly. And it highlights the incredible complexity and coordination of our renal system.
Now, this is reminding me of that aldosterone escape we talked about earlier. Even when aldosterone is pushing hard to retain sodium,
Right.
our bodies find ways to compensate.
It really is amazing.
It's like this constant push and pull to maintain equilibrium.
Yeah.
But makes me wonder, does what we eat play a significant role in all of this?
Absolutely.
I mean, can our diet influence aldosterone and these balancing acts?
What you eat has a direct impact on your electrolyte levels.
Right.
Which, as we know, can trigger those hormonal responses we've been discussing.
So let's talk specifics. We already know that a salty meal can lower aldosterone levels to help the body get rid of that excess sodium.
Right.
But what about potassium?
Yeah,
Does eating potassium-rich foods have a similar effect?
it does. Just like with sodium,
Mm-hmm.
your dietary potassium intake can directly influence aldosterone secretion.
Okay.
Eating a high potassium diet can stimulate aldosterone release,
Right.
which helps your body excrete that extra potassium.
So loading up on bananas, leafy greens, and avocados could lead to higher aldosterone levels. That's fascinating.
It is interesting.
It's like our bodies are saying, okay, we've got too much potassium here. Time to call in aldosterone to help us get rid of it.
Exactly. It's a reminder that our bodies are constantly monitoring and adjusting,
Right.
trying to maintain that delicate balance no matter what we throw at them.
This all makes so much sense, but it also raises another question.
Yeah.
Are there any specific dietary recommendations when it comes to supporting healthy aldosterone function and electrolyte balance?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
While everyone's individual needs are different,
Of course.
and it's always best to talk to your doctor for personalized advice,
Right.
there are some general guidelines that can support overall health and electrolyte balance.
Of course, it's never one size fits all.
Right.
But what are some of those general recommendations?
In general, a balanced diet that's rich in fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, and not overly high in processed foods or added salt is a good foundation.
Okay.
It's all about providing your body with the nutrients it needs to function optimally, including those essential electrolytes.
So moderation and variety, the usual suspect.
Exactly. Listen to your body.
Right.
Pay attention to what you're eating. And if you have any concerns about your electrolyte levels or aldosterone function,
Right.
don't hesitate to reach out to your healthcare provider.
This has been such an eye-opening exploration of aldosterone. I'm amazed by how much this tiny hormone impacts our health.
Yeah, me too.
It's like this silent guardian, constantly working behind the scenes to keep us running smoothly.
It is.
And who knew licorice could be such a potent endocrine disruptor?
I know, right? It really is amazing how something so seemingly harmless can have such a significant impact.
It really is amazing.
But even with all we've discussed, remember, we've only just begun to scratch the surface of aldosterone's role in the body.
I know. It's exciting to think about all the other secrets aldosterone might be holding.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So where should we go from here?
Well,
What other avenues should we be exploring when it comes to this fascinating hormone?
one area that's particularly intriguing is the connection between aldosterone and cardiovascular health.
Okay.
We know it plays a role in regulating blood pressure,
Right.
but researchers are finding increasing evidence that aldosterone may be implicated in a range of cardiovascular conditions, like heart failure and stroke.
Whoa, no, that's something I definitely want to learn more about. It seems like aldosterone's reach extends far beyond just regulating salt and water balance.
Exactly. It's becoming increasingly clear that aldosterone is a key player in a whole network of interconnected systems that influence our overall health.
Okay, so we've got our next deep dive topic lined up, but before we get ahead of ourselves,
Right.
let's wrap up our exploration of aldosterone's core functions.
Okay.
What's the key message you want our listeners to take away from this conversation?
I think the most important takeaway is that aldosterone is a master regulator. It's constantly working behind the scenes, often without us even realizing it,
Right.
to maintain that delicate equilibrium that keeps our bodies humming along.
It really is a testament to the incredible adaptability and resilience of our bodies.
It is.
And it makes me realize just how much is going on beneath the surface
Yeah.
every second of every day,
Absolutely.
all orchestrated by this tiny but mighty hormone.
It's truly remarkable. And the more we learn about aldosterone and its intricate role in our health, the more we appreciate the amazing complexity of the human body.
It's mind-boggling to think about all these complex processes happening inside us all the time,
It really is.
keeping us balanced and functioning.
Right.
But what happens when those processes go wrong?
Well,
We've talked about primary aldosteronism, where aldosterone levels are too high,
right.
but are there other ways aldosterone can get out of whack?
That's an important question. While overproduction of aldosterone gets a lot of attention,
Right.
there are also situations where aldosterone levels are too low,
Okay.
and that can cause a whole other set of problems.
Okay, so too much aldosterone is bad, but too little is also a problem.
Yeah.
That makes sense considering how crucial this hormone is for maintaining balance. What kind of problems can arise when someone doesn't have enough aldosterone?
Well, one of the most well-known conditions associated with low aldosterone is Addison's disease.
Okay.
It's an autoimmune disorder where the body's own immune system attacks the adrenal glands,
Right.
leading to a deficiency in several hormones, including aldosterone.
And if aldosterone isn't there to regulate sodium and potassium,
Yeah,
I imagine that throws off the delicate balance we've been talking about.
exactly.
Yeah.
Without enough aldosterone, the body loses excessive amounts of sodium in the urine
Right.
and retains potassium.
Okay.
This can lead to a whole cascade of symptoms
Yeah.
like fatigue, weakness, low blood pressure, and even life-threatening electrolyte imbalances.
So it's like the opposite problem of what we see in primary aldosteronism. Instead of holding on to too much sodium, the body can't hold on to enough.
Precisely.
Right.
Both ends of the spectrum can disrupt that crucial balance and lead to serious health issues.
It really highlights the importance of finding that sweet spot, that Goldilocks zone where everything is just right.
It does.
But this makes me wonder,
Yeah.
are there other conditions that might be linked to aldosterone, either directly or indirectly?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Could imbalances in this hormone contribute to problems beyond those we've already discussed?
That's an area of active research. Scientists are investigating potential links between aldosterone and a wide range of conditions, including heart disease, kidney disease, and even some types of cancer.
Wow, so the ripple effects of aldosterone dysfunction could be far-reaching.
They could be, yeah.
It really underscores how crucial this hormone is for maintaining our overall health.
It does.
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this incredibly important hormone, from its role in regulating blood pressure and electrolytes to its potential connections to other health conditions. Aldosterone seems to be involved in so many aspects of our well-being.
It really is a fascinating hormone with far-reaching influence.
It is.
And the more we learn about it, the more we appreciate the incredible complexity of the human body
Right.
and all the intricate systems that keep us alive and thriving.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to ponder today.
Yeah, I think so.
We've unpacked the complexities of aldosterone, from its cellular mechanisms to its crucial role in maintaining balance, and even explored some of the potential consequences when things go awry.
Exactly.
It's been a pleasure to delve into the world of aldosterone with you.
Likewise.
And remember,
Yeah.
this is just the beginning of the journey.
Oh, for sure.
There's so much more to learn about this remarkable hormone and its impact on our health.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for research in this area.
Exactly. And who knows what other surprises await us as we continue to explore the hidden workings of our bodies. Maybe we'll even discover a way to harness the power of aldosterone for good,
That'd be great.
developing new treatments for the conditions we discussed today.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless. And that's what makes science so exciting. It's a constant process of discovery,
Right.
unraveling the mysteries of life one question at a time.
Well said. So to our listeners,
Yeah.
we encourage you to stay curious, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring the wonders of your own biology.
Couldn't agree more.
Until next time, keep diving deep into the fascinating world of science and health.